run through some of my model of Hemshech of some Ayin Beis. Is when they get to the beginning, the first mimer. Obviously, the first page is sort of an introduction. He talks about the Inyan of Kesed, different Pirushim in Kesed, but that's not the main issue that he's going to discuss. He gets back to Kesed only later on in the middle of Ayin Gimel. So the main part of the mimer we're going to start is Sif Beis, Ayin Beis. And this is where, if we want to put it into a nutshell, this mimer, the Rebbe Shusayim, is telling us the Golomb of his slapshus. Klolei slapshus. Klolei slapshus means that the way that the keiches come into the guf, there's a seder of his slapshus. Biprotius, he explains later, there's two inyanim in his slapshus, what he calls his achdus and his galus. He explains later. When they get to the inyan of his slapshus on the Sif Beis, in Ayin Beis, he explains that the his slapshus of the keiches in the guf, the nefesh in the guf, and the keiches in the guf, he says it's not just that the nefesh is mislabish in the guf, but you also find that the keiches are mislabshim zeh bo zeh. He calls them his slapshus are keiches zeh bo zeh. And if you learn it at the beginning, you can end up with a little bit of a shiloh in Hasbara. When he says the keiches are mislabshim zeh bo zeh, he says, for example, that let's take an example of the feet, right? Everybody understands that the seichel is mislabish in the head and not in the feet. The keich hiluch is in the feet. Why can't the seichel be mislabish, the keiches ha-seichel be mislabish in the regel? Why can't the keich ha-seichel be mislabish in the regel? So he says, Pashat, because you have to have a keli which is going to be able to receive this keich. And since the keich, the regel is not made to receive seichel, so it's not a keli to the seichel, the seichel can't be mislabish in the regel. That makes sense. But when he says that his slapshus of the keich zeh bo zeh, he says that the keich ha'elyon, which is mislabish in the keich tatan, for example, how is the seichel mislabish in the regel? First of all, where do we see a moshel of the keich ha'seichel be mislabish in the regel or in the hands? You see, for example, if somebody draws, he has a keich ha'tzil, you see seichel that's coming into the hand. He's able to draw in a certain way. A musician is able to play with a lot of chokhmah. So the chokhmah is coming to his hand. How did the chokhmah come into his hand? So he bavolin. So the chokhmah that comes into the hands is not in the guf of the hands, it's only in the keich of the hand. Why? Because the guf of the hand is not a keli to this keich. Fine. But when the keich of the seichel, the keich ha-chochma, is mislabish in the keich ha-tnuah shebiyad, he then adds on that even that keich ha-chochma, which is mislabish in the keich ha-tnuah, is not the whole keich ha-chochma. It's only what he calls the ha'ora. I'm just looking for the word inside. Mislabish urak ha'ora levad loy etzem ha-keich. Now, why would that be? A question in the Seder. Why would it be that only a ha'orah of the keich is mislabish in the hand? Why not the whole keich? The whole problem why the keich ha-seichel can't be mislabish in the hand and the guf of the hand is understood, because the guf of the hand is not made for seichel. You need a mayach gashmi, just like you understand that the keich ha-ear can't be mislabish in the ear. So the seichel can't be mislabish in the hand. You need a keli gashmi that's going to be makabel. So I understand the keich ha-chochma is not mislabish in the yad. But then he said that there's a keich in the yad, the keich hatnu, which is a keich ruchni, and there the keich ha-seichel can be mislabish in the keich ruchni, and it makes sense why. This is ruchnis and this is ruchnis. The hand is gashmi, but the keich ha-ruchni shebeseichel and the keich ha-ruchni of the hand. What's the problem with that? Why shouldn't it be able to be mislabish? He says, yeah, that can be mislabish. Ruchnis into ruchnis is mislabish. But when he says it is mislabish, ruchnis into ruchnis, the keich ha-ruchni into the keich ha-tnuah, the keich ha-seichel into the keich ha-tnuah. There he says, but you should know it's only the ha'oras ha-seichel. Why not the whole seichel? What anybody think of this question? I don't know. But why can't you say the whole seichel is mislabish in the keich? If the problem of gashmis has gone away, Why can't you have the whole Keich HaSeichel going to the Keich HaRuchni Shebiyad? It's sort of a klotz kasha, and the teretz is also quite straightforward. The teretz is based on the yesod that we spoke a little bit about in the Hadoma. It's the yesod of a klal in Chassidus, and it's negay in the moshul because it's negay in the nimshul. So klal godel in the whole seder of Teres Chassidus, Chabad, the klal. Everything has to make sense. Everything has to be the seder v'hadraga. You can't stick something that has no shaykhs with something else and put them together just because they had one single tzad hashon. Those who have learned, for example, the hemshech of Ranat, right? Lulavarov Ranat, it goes by Arichas into a whole chapter of Italia if the nefesh has kreiches with its seer before they come into the guf, or only when it comes into the guf. Should we say the kreiches are all pshutim? That means to say that the Oir HaNefesh is one Oir HaNefesh, and it comes into the guf, and when it settles inside this hand, inside the hand it becomes a Koyach HaYad. When it settles inside the head it becomes Seichel, when it comes inside the foot it becomes a Koyach HaTnur. Or do we say no, there's 10 Koyachas to the Nefesh, or Kama Vakama Koyachas to the Nefesh, and when and each Koyach has its seer, it's a certain type of Koyach, and it looks for a Keli that's masim to him. So the Koyach HaSeichel is already Seichel even before he comes into the guf, and he looks for a guf, for a chelik of the guf that's going to be masim to seichel. So he says, obviously, it can't be that the keiches are pshutim and the whole seer is only mitzad the guf. Why not? Because it's too far apart. It wouldn't make sense. How would something that's poshut be all of a sudden nishtana called surasa, called mitziusay, and take on its seer of a kelim? In other words, it's too far apart. Pshitas and gufnias will not get together. You have to say that the keiches haruchniim, that atzmam have already a shayches to this particular keli, and therefore when it comes into the keli will be mitzaya that which is there already. A similar thing over here. The whole hemshech now, this is the beginning, he's laying the ground for what he's going to continue to say. It has to make sense. It has to have some shayches. Things don't come from pshitas all of a sudden to its seal. So, if the shaila is, going back to the question, why can't you say that the seichel is mislabish in the koyach haruchni shebeyad? So he said, yeah, no, the koyach haruchni of seichel into the koyach haruchni of the yad can work, but you should know it's only ha'aras ha'seichel. Why only ha'aras ha'seichel? Is also here, this is one of the klolim of mislabshis. There has to be a shayches between the seichel and the yad. If there's no shayches between the seichel and the yad, and the Koyach HaYad, even the Koyach HaRuchni of the Yad, they wouldn't get together. What has a Gemara, a Svar in a Gemara, got to do with the hand? With the Koyach HaTnur Shebiyad? Is there any shaykhs between Maman HaMutal B'Safik Chelkim with the Koyach HaTnur Shebiyad or the Koyach HaHilach Sheberegel? Is there any shaykhs between the two? Obviously not. So how would this Svara go into the hand? It won't go, because there's no shaykhs. So first of all, that's why he says the only chelik of the seichel that will go into the koyach hatnur shebiyad is going to be ha'aras ha'seichel. In other words, you have to find the chelik in seichel which is shayches to koyach hatnur shebiyad, and that part of the seichel will go into the koyach hatnur shebiyad. Meaning, the seichel is not just seichel of svaris in the Gemara. The seichel of a person is kail also the seichel of tnur. There's a seichel in the person's mind of how to dance with his feet and how to be mitzvah with his hand. That chelik of seichel will be mislabish in the koyach hatnur shebiyad. So answer the question. That is the answer to the question. Is slabshus, the klolei slabshus means there has to be a shayches between the dover hamislabish and the mokim that he's being mislabish. Otherwise he won't be misachid with him. This is the rule of seder v'hadroga. Everything has to go in a leifin of seder v'hadroga. And this is the rule in the whole seder shtalshlus and all the inyanim. It all has to make sense. It all has to be a shayches mi-madrega l'madrega. Otherwise, remember, that's the taich of the word seder hishtalshlus. Why seder hishtalshlus? There's a seder. In other words, even though there's halakim of seder hishtalshlus which don't make sense in gas. For example, yesh mi'ayin. How do you get from ayin, which is not mitzias, to a yesh? How do you get from ayin to yesh? However long you're going to think about it, and however many biyurim you're going to have, there's still a nakuda over there which seichel nush you can never understand. How do you come from nothing to something? This wasn't here before, mitamol it's here. It doesn't make sense. But even in the not making sense, we have to be mazbeh as much as we can be mazbeh. that the ayin which is mislab, which is mahava the yesh, is not the ayin of Ein Sof Shlifnat Tzimtzum. The Ayin Shlifnat Tzimtzum would never be able to make a table. He wouldn't be able to make a table? Yeah, but it's not Kol Yochel, anything can happen. You can go straight from Atzmas, straight down to a table, without anything in between. If it's Atzmas, or Mitzad Kol Yochel. But if Mitzad Kol Yochel, you can close all the Svarim, there's no biurim, there's nothing to be Mavayim. Kol Yochel, you got a question? Kol Yochel. We're obviously talking that there's a Seder Hishtash, there's a Seder how it works. So, the Moshel is in the Nefesh. How does Seichel come into the Regel? So he says, first of all, Seichel doesn't go into a Regel, because the Regel is a Gashmi. It can only go into the Ruchnius of the Regel. That's stage one. Number two, which part of the Seichel can go into the Keich HaTnusha Regel? That part of Seichel which is Shaychus to Regel, in other words, the Seichel of how to dance, the Chochmas Harikut, like the Maisa of the Spala Zeder, the Yonah, we taught them how to dance. There's a Chochma in dancing. There's a certain Chochma in it. That Chochma cannot, yes, that it has a Shaychus to Rikud, to Regel, so therefore it will be Mislabish in the Keich HaTnusha Regel. So that's the first klal in Klal HaIslabshus, that it has to make sense and it has to be Shaychus. And then the Mislabish, the Mislabish can be Misached with the Lavush. That's number one. Then he adds on another klal in Klal HaIslabshus is that the Mislabish is the Hisgalus in the Lavush, as opposed to what? Obviously, if you put on a Lavush, you're inside the Lavush for Hisgalus. How you be? The Lavush could be master on you a little bit. All Lavushim are being master. What does it mean that the Mislabish has to be the Hisgalus in the Lavush? And the answer is there's two types of Islabshus. You can have a Islabshus where the Lavush takes over. For example, how do you call the neshama coming down inside the guf? Islabshus. How do you call the neshama coming inside the nefesh bahamis? Also you call it Islabshus. But there's a difference between the Islabshus of a neshama, of a tzaddik, for example, inside his nefesh bahamis, which is pure, which is nisbar, it's lachatchila and edla nefesh bahamis, and a person who has a strong nefesh bahamis is mamash bahim. This lavush can be in such a way that the lavush is misgaber and takes over, and the mislabish is stuck. The extreme case of that would be, brought down in many places, would be a gilgul. A gilgul is you have a neshama which comes inside a behemoth, which is bechlal nishkin keli to this neshama, and he's stuck there. He has no bitu, he has no expression. Why? Because he's not b'hisgalus. He's in a knifen of nakuda, he's b'hisalnus inside the guf, and he's not able to express himself in any way. That's when the lavush took over, and he's begolus inside this guf. The way the neshama, the nefesh bahamis works out, is that the neshama has the koyach to be mevar the nefesh bahamis, so it's not totally slabshus. But the lavush takes over, he's still on top, and as he talks about later, the inyan of moyach shalat alalev, which brings us to the next thing, also in klolei slabshus. Moyach shalat alalev. How does the Rebbe Nishma Seidin explain moyach shalat alalev over here in Perik, was it? Probably Perik Gimel. What?
Still in base.
Still in base? Yeah. Me'ich Shal Talalev. When he talks about Me'ich Shal Talalev, he explains how it is. And this is different from what he explains in Tanya. How does the Alter Rebbe explain Tanya Me'ich Shal Talalev? In Perik Yud Beis, in Perik Yud Dalet, he says that every person, it's Sad Tevatul Dasa, his Me'ich's in charge, and he has Bekoyach to be Nimshel Baruch Tavosai, or Lisapik. He can be moishel on his ruach tavosa, and he can hold himself back. So even b'shas ma'aser, he's waiting to do whatever it is his time from Olam Hazeh. He can decide, listen, I'm going to put it away, I'm not going to do it. Iskafia. That's not the Islabshus he's talking about. That's not the Me'ich Shal Talalev that he's talking about over here. If you look at over here, he talks about the way that the shlita of the nefesh lekis, the Me'ich on the nefesh bahamis, he says that it's mislabish in the, he's mazbit to the nefesh bahamis. Bederach pnimi, al yidei slapshus v'z masher merech shelo ein ze shlita bederach hechrich, ki im shepoel chalishus b'hateva shebelev u'mezachchoi. This is not the same thing as he says in Tanya Perik Yud Beis and Yud Dalet. And what does he quote for a source for this type of Me'ich Shal Talalev? From Tanya, but not Perik Yud Beis. He jumps to Perik Nun Aleph. He says, "U'kamosh kosav v'sev shel bein hatam, mipnei shehalev mekabel chayes mehameich al kein hameich shalit." We come out, in other words, there's two types of Me'ich Shal Talalev. There's Me'ich Shal Talalev that the Me'ich is mislabish and is mazbit to the nefesh bahamis. You ought to be like this. It makes sense. It's for you better. It's a whole Indian of his brainless and being mislavish and explaining to Nefesh Bahamis, or should we say like the marshal that Rabbi Malach said. There he was whipping the horses. You have to whip the horses, but he whipped the horses and he says, according to one Gesi, he says, "Da schmeißen die Pferde so, sie sollen wissen, dass sie seinen Pferd." Then there was some schmeißen die Pferde, sie sollen werden Eisfeld. There's schmeißen. And then there's being masbeh. You can't be masbeh to a horse, but to Nefesh Bahamis you can be masbeh. You're masbeh to him that this is not right, this is better, of course it's good, and then slowly the person will change inside, from within. Because the Mayach is Moshel on the lev. What does it mean Moshel? He explains because, like says in Tanya, the lev is Makabel, the highest from the Mayach. So he's a Makabel from the Mayach, so he's going to listen. He's going to change from within. But that's not the same as Mayach Shat HaLev that he talked about in Ayin Beis. There he says that Yachol Imshel Beruch Tavasu Lisapik, to hold himself in. So there's two types of Mayach Shat HaLev. In fact, you can make it into three if you want. There's Mayach Shat HaLev that he's just Pashat Behechris, he's in charge, he tells the Nefesh Bahamis, listen, we're not doing this. Iskafia, plain Iskafia, ruthless Iskafia, without any explanations. What's the word the Fidik Rebbe says? Azoy nishtamish. Azoy. This is how it is. You want, aber nicht. Then there's being Masbeh, there's Mayach Shat HaLev through Hasbara. And there's a higher Mayach Shat HaLev, which is not discussed here, Bechlal. They've spoken about, and you'll come across it in different Maimorim, here also later on in the Hemshech, called the Mayach, the Pnimius HaMayach is Shalt and the Pnimius HaLev. That's a very high Madrega for Tzadikim Gedolim with Mech and the Gadlus. There's even a higher level. What's interesting is that we find in Tanya, in another place, alluded to all these Madregas. Is there Tanya here by any chance? Right behind you? You don't mind, thanks. Hey, Lamed Hey. Hey, Lamed Hey, there's an interesting Russian. The Vedic is masbid up to Kabbalah. But just take a simple Russian. In Hey, Lamed Hey, when he's discussing about the way the Nefesh Elikis is pale on the goof and the Nefesh Bahamis, he says, the very essence of the Nefesh Bahamis, when you're doing a mitzvah, so you say, putting on tefillin for example, b'shas ma'aser, the whole goof is a merkava telakus. Who's a merkava telakus? Your goof. What about Nefesh Bahamis? It's a merkava. Seems so, but also Nefesh Bahamis is the same behemoth as before. As soon as you finish davening, he's back to Elam Hazard. So Mohusavat Smusa is loy nechlo belakus. So he says Mikol Maki, it doesn't matter. He can still become a merkava. Why? He says Mikol Maki. Me'acha de iskafin l'kedusha. Listen to the Rishonos. Me'acha de iskafin l'kedusha. U'bal korcha oinim omi. U'maskimim. U'misratzim. There's four Rishonos. Iskafin l'kedusha. Bal korcha oinim omi. U'maskimim. U'misratzim nasiyas hamitzvah. Al yidei iskabris na'nefesh l'kish shebemeich sheshal tevalev. Ve'hein b'shor azuba b'chinas golas. At the time being, Nefesh Bahamis is quiet. V'shina is sleeping. Why is there no manir for the Hashras Hashkin on the person? Because B'shas Ma'aser, the Nefesh Bahamis is quiet. He's docile. The horse is not jumping around. He's docile for the time being. But look at these four Lashonis. Iskafyon, Bal Korchoy, Yahoinim Omein, Umaskimim, Umisratzim. And he says, after that, because the Nefesh Elikis is Mayach Shal Tavalev. So you see the Mayach Shal Tavalev actually has four levels. It can be Iskafyon, he's just being misapik, he's not doing what he wants to do even though he wants to. Bahamis is kochen zich, but nevertheless he's stopping himself. That's first level. Then Bal Kocha Ein U'Nem. Where's that expression coming? Bal Kocha Ein U'Nem. We have a Friday, doesn't he say that about Friday night with the Malachim? The good Malach and the bad Malach, and Bal Kocha he has to say Amen. That means he's not agreeable, he's forced to say Amen, but at least he's saying Amen. He's not like the first one. Iskafia means he's saying, no, I don't agree with this, but he has no choice. Mayach is Shelet. Balkocha is already one step closer. Then comes the next level. He says, Umaskim eshe maskim. He's become more docile, he's maskim to the thing. And the last level is Misratzin, he himself wants to do it. That's already a transformation that his Nefesh Bahamis has also become part of it. So you can see Taka, the Emer Shal Talev, there's Taka many, many levels. At least here we have four. And that's why it's not a stira over here. The Rebbe was saying, who's talking about his slapshus, he goes straight for the last one. Because the first one, when he's doing his skafi l'kedusha, he's not being mislabish. It's more like rotzen. In fact, the lashon of the Alter Rebbe over there is rotzen shebemayach. There, he's not being mislabish. He's telling him, you're not going to do this. I'm going to tie you up. Iskafia. That's it. You explain to me anything. You tell me why. It's not explaining to you. Rotzen shebemayach. Then there's islabshus, means you're explaining. How can you explain to a behemoth? If it would be a behemoth like a horse, is one thing. We're not talking about a behemoth like a horse. We're talking about the lev of the person which is metkabel from the mayach. So there is an inside connection over there. If the mayach is mislabish and starts talking to the nefesh b'hamis in his language, then slowly he will make a transformation from within. That's an inyan of his slabshus. Right. That's when I get to that pedic.
In Tanya, what level was he talking about?
All different levels. In Ayin Beis, he was talking about the first level, he's just doing Iskafia, the Kayach.
Okay.
And then at the end, the Rebbe was saying is quoting from Perek Nun Aleph, he's already quoting that it is an Alephim of Pnimis, Slapshus.
That's the highest Madega, no?
The highest Madega, of course.
Yeah.
It's not the highest, there's
It's the
actually
second,
higher than that.
yeah.
There's Pnimis Halev. This is a level that's spoken about, you'll come across it in Chassidus, which we don't really understand what it is, because Zoe forbid tzaddikim, that they have gadlus hameichim, that the lev is bechlal not bebechinas mogish. There's no feelings, there's no hispilus. Even when we talk about a pu'ula of the mayach on the lev, it's still two separate things. Even though he's pale from the inside, but there's always, what's the lashon that you always have from the bechein of the hisbainus? He's misbainus something, and from the bechein comes a change inside him. But it's only the bechein, which is the chitzenius of this, the whole hisbainus, then comes to the lev. But not that b'shas ma'isa, while he's toughest in the seichel, his lev is doing anything. It's quiet, it's listening. But you haven't been mashpia. That's why do we have in Chassidus, we have avodah dika maimon? What's this avodah dika maimon? Doesn't the Rebbe say he's supposed to take a hero and avodah from everything? Learn about atzmas and mahus, kavim regime. Supposed to take a hero and avodah to Hashem. So why do we have avodah dika? These are avodah dika maimon. Why do you call these avodah dika maimon? The answer is because we don't always see the connection between the Rishimu and your Nefesh B'Hamis. It's very difficult to connect the two. But occasionally there's a moment where he explains it. V'derech his slapshus, he goes down a lot. That's why the Rebbe Rashad talks about in Torah Shon, he talks about his brightness and davening. He talks about there. It's not. You can think about high things, but you're not going to have any effect on Nefesh B'Hamis. The avodah has to be with things which are pashta things. What should you be misbeiding in? Oyer and Sof and the Tzimtzum Rishon? Or should you be misbeiding in his Havas Yesh B'Yayin and the Chai Selaki? What was the Avodah Dika Maimon that they learned from the Babish, one of the famous Maimorim? It was Acha Sha'alti Neta. Why Acha Sha'alti Neta? Because there he's not requiring you to become Batal B'Mitzias. He's requiring you to be Bittul Ayesh. He's telling you, listen, this is Gashmis, Tefes Mokim, it's Taka Mitzias. But you should know that the Ikka is not, the Ikka of this Gashmis is the Nefesh. V'Horaya starts explaining to you, look at it. If you take the nefesh out, what's going to be left of it? It's going to wither away to nothing. It's going to disintegrate. So what's keeping it chayes? What's the real chayes? What's the real mitzias over here? The reality of the mitzias is not the gufnias, it's the ruchnias. So you're explaining to the nefesh b'hamis in Alpi Seichel to look at things from a more primistic view. So it's not bittul the mitzias, it's bittul ayesh. There's a mitzias, but it's bottle. That you can take. But if you start being misbeinen in atzmas and stuff is everywhere, so therefore you're bottle the mitzias, and in makal ziv hashemesh and the shemesh, you start having these tziyurim of a shemesh and then trying to work out how the ziv is inside, outside. It's too much for the Rebbe Hamis. You can't take it unless you're one of the higher neshamas, which goes straight to atzmas and others. But otherwise, most people have to work step by step. Seder v'hadra. So you have to be slabshus in the Nefesh Hamis. Anyway, that was the Inyan Nefesh Hamis. We've only got a minute or two left. I just wanted to finish off the another point, which is also. Just finish off the point of the Maimah. The point of the Maimah is that the Rebbe Shussein has explained to us that the fact that the keiches are mislabish in the guf is again you're not taking pshitas of the nefesh into a keli which has a tzir, because pshitas and tzir won't match. It has to be with seder adroga. So therefore, the maskana, the punchline of this maimah is what? He's going to repeat it later. The punchline is that the keiches are pnimiyim be'etzim. The keiches of the nefesh are pnimiyim be'etzim. That means they were fixed into the nefesh lachatchila that there's 10 keiches and they're pnimiyim be'etzim. That means they're mugbalim be'etzim. There's 10 keiches mugbalim, and that's why when they come to the guf is merely revealing that which is there already. He's not being mechadish something. He's revealing that which is there already. Now the question will be, so how did you get from the etzem nefesh to the keiches? So there's no one. Okay. Is that your son? Yeah. So the keiches are pnimiyim be'etzem. That means they're made l'chatchila to go into keli. You're not coming from pshitas to keiches, and the guf is being machadish. It's here. They are pnimiyim be'etzem. The only problem is this is where the mashal is eina daimel l'nimshul. This is where the problem. You might think of this problem. You have to realize that mashal eina daimel l'nimshul. By the mashal, how do you get from an etzem pashut to 10 keiches mitzion, 10 keiches pnimiyim? He doesn't explain that in the mind. The Maila, how do you get from Atzma Seir and Sof to Esses Spheres? The Tzir is the same Tzir. You have Pshitas Eir and Sof, and inside there are called 10 spheres, which are the Esses Spheres Agnuzas. And those Esses Spheres Agnuzas are like the 10 Keiches, they're Pnimim Be'etzem, and all they have to do is go through the channels of Tzimtzum, and they'll come into Kelim automatically, because it's a Keich Mugbul, a Keich with a Tzir. The same thing, it's going to the marshal of the keiches, the pnimiyim be'etzem, and that's why they come into these chalkei aguf. The question is, how did you get the chatchila to 10 keiches from an etzem pashut? The answer is by person. There's no explanation. That's how the Eibishter was keveya. The Eibishter was boyer the person with a nefesh, and attached to him was 10 keiches, like 10 ivorim. 10 ivorim attached to the etzem nefesh. They start out kolul, and then the nimshach lachutz. And then you have 10 keiches gluyim. And whoever they beforehand, they were klulim be'etzim. But the etzim nefesh himself is an etzim pashut. Masha'inkim l'mayla, you can't say that the Eibishter has to have 10 spheres. So obviously by the Eibishter it doesn't work like that. By the Eibishter it works as Eir and Sof HaPashut. How do you get to 10 spheres? The Eibishter has to be mechadish, even if not tzimtzum, as spheres are. We'll discuss that maybe next time.